Testing. I think we're good now. Yeah, so fire away questions. And so I'm Sean Krampton, distinguished engineer on Calico. So I look after Felix mostly in the data plane. That's my role. I haven't had a huge part in the open source UI piece, Whisker and that sort of stuff, but I'll do my best on those questions. But yeah, any Calico questions, happy to take a stab. And this is my colleague Lance, who is a mischievous tester and does a lot of our scale testing, so he might be able to answer some questions there. Go ahead, you in the green.
So a question I had before, so the collecting the metrics of the Whisker and the Goldmain, does it work with AWS CNI networking, or do you need Calico CNI networking?
Okay, so the question was, does Whisker and the metrics collection work with AWS CNI as well as with the Calico CNI? I believe it works with all the CNIs that we support, because the metrics that we bring in, they all come in from our kind of policy engine, which is the same across all of those, and it doesn't really matter if you've deployed the BPF one or the NF tables one or the IP tables one. They all support these features. So yeah, I think we support all of the CNIs that we support. Yeah, go ahead.
How significant is the overhead of the collection? Because you said it happens in Felix, right? So in the Calico node pod, is there a significant increase of resource consumption?
So the question is there a significant increase in resource consumption in the Calico node pod? That's probably one for Lance. He's testing that at the moment.
There is some impact, yes. So you can, if you turn off Whisker and Goldmain, then there's very little impact. If you have them turned on, Felix is buffering, I can't remember how many minutes worth of data. So it does increase its memory usage by a bit. And obviously the how much will depend on how many flows per second that particular node is seeing.
So the exact amount, which we're trying to bring it down. We're in testing and trying to fix low-hanging fruit there to bring that down as much as possible, because we don't want people to deploy Calico 330 and suddenly see a spike in their memory usage particularly. But when you deploy 330, you'll have that choice of whether you want to deploy the extra components and whether you want to take that cost. So we'll try to give some guidance on like how much you might need to increase your, CPU memory limits on your pods if indeed you need to. But yeah, there is an impact in that buffer.
As a follow-up, can I turn it on off in a running pod, or do I have to restart the Calico node pod? And can I turn it on off for a single node or only for the whole cluster?
It's for the whole cluster, I think.
So the big scale deployment piece like that turns it on and off for the whole thing. I think that might be the only way to do it initially. It goes through Felix's configuration mechanism, which has more flexibility than that. You can toggle that with a custom resource. But I think in the first release, at least, the operator is kind of configuring everything together, and the operator will fight you if you try to change a setting that it has configured. So if that's important to you, like I think it's great that like
if I don't use the operator, it's part of the Felix configuration most likely or not.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things you need to configure, like all the certificates and everything, if you're not using the operator. I'm not sure if that's all going to be documented and everything.
I don't think it's going to be documented without the operator, at least for the first release.
Yeah, so I think there's been a few questions like that where it's like, oh, could I do this? Could I filter per namespace? Could I ignore this really noisy pod? Those are all awesome like reactions, and I've been thinking, oh, we should file like RFE requests for all these and like put them on some kind of backlog. But this is the first release of the product, so first release, and I expect we'll get that kind of feedback. So thanks for throwing those out there. Go ahead.
So in the Tagera, I'm manager in the enterprise offering. There is already a sort of Whisker there. You can already see what is blocking, but there isn't Goldmain at this moment, so right? So that's a new feature. Is it more performant, or what is it different from the current features that Tigera Manager is offering? How does it?
That's correct. So the new.
Repeating my question.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, the question is how does the new feature differ from the flow logs collection and visualization that we had in Enterprise already? And I think the best way to answer that is that the collection, the low-level collection, is a piece that we open sourced. The aggregation up through Goldmain and up through Whisker is something that we designed for open source, and then I think it's going to flow back into Enterprise to give you like more real-time information than Enterprise has at the moment. So Enterprise works on a longer aggregation window and has a different log aggregation pathway that we thought was right for Enterprise.
And different log storage.
And different log storage. So Enterprise covers your use cases like, long-term storage of audit logging and, storing your flow logs, shipping them in various places. Like we have all that covered in Enterprise and Calico Cloud already. And we're set up in Calico Cloud, like in the paid tier of Calico Cloud, we retain your logs much longer. So that's the main cost of implementing a service like Calico Cloud is the storage of the logs, and so that's what you're paying for if you upgrade and you go from the free tier to the paid tier of Calico Cloud. You get longer log storage, and then Calico Enterprise, you're in full control of exactly where your logs go, and run your own Elastic in your cluster or in your data center outside or whatever you want to do. How's Reza getting on?
I'm ready.
Cool. You want to share something?
All right. So the idea is, right now, what you can do is you can create I'm a big fan of K3S, so you can either use Kind or K3D to create your own cluster. So a couple of things: when you create your cluster, make sure to disable the network policy engine if they come with one. I know K3D or K3S comes with one. So you disable that, you disable the default CNI. What we are hoping to see when we have the cluster is our nodes should not be ready, since our CRI shouldn't have the CNI in place. Now, after you've done that, what you can do is you can grab the latest manifest from our GitHub, run it. After you run it, hopefully you install the Tigera operator. Tigera operator is going to be your dedicated Tigera person in the cluster. It would instruct Calico with your configuration, and it will make sure it does what you need to do and make sure nothing goes wrong in your cluster. Now, it's a deployment. When it's done and running, you can create your configurations. For instance, here I just want a cluster that has no BGP. Again, I don't have any needs for BGP. I want a simple IP pool, the NAT outgoing that we were talking about, because I want my pods to be able to talk to the internet. And I do want the API server because it's great to just do kubectl, get Calico policies and have it there. So after you create that, you can use something that comes with Tigera operator, which is Tigera status command. It basically tells you what is going on in your installation. All the components that you create will be shown here. So for instance, API server is a component that we create using the operator, and you can check it out in Tigera status, its progress, how it's doing, what it is doing. If for some reason you hit some sort of issue, for instance, this is something that I've seen a lot of people do. It's like they create a cluster with a CIDR that is, for instance, 172.160.16.00/16. Then they do a pod CIDR of like 192.168. So Kubelet has some other sort of IP address for the pods, and Calico is instructed to do 192.168, and the operator goes like, hey buddy, it's not possible, like you need to figure out, you need to either change me or change the kubelet for me to run. And what you can do is you can actually dash OYAML the output of Tigera status, and it will give you like more information if there's an error or those sort of things. So with a valid configuration, you get this, which is the best output, means everything is running and all the components are available. Now, if you remember, I talked about Goldmain. So Goldmain is a new component. If you're upgrading, make sure you need to create those components. If you're installing 330, don't worry about it. It's already in the custom resources, so you don't need to do much there. Now, next is to create the Goldmain manifest. So when you create that operator resource, again, come to the Tigera status. It will show you how Goldmain is doing. It will go on, do its thing. So a couple of things that are in the workshop is where to find stuff that are related to Goldmain. For instance, Goldmain creates a service in Calico system namespace. So this is the Goldmain service. It's used by Felix to send information. You can verify that by going to Calico system namespace, daemon sets, Calico node, and somewhere in here you should see a Goldmain. Alright, I think it's easier to do gold. Yeah. So this is the key. There's a value which would be the service of Goldmain, which is like goldmain.calico-system service. Anyway, the other thing is Tigera operator creates a couple of secrets. And again, Calico system namespace. So Goldmain key pair, those are the certificates that will be used to talk to Goldmain. There's also a config map here and the deployment. So if you come to deployments in Calico system, you should see the Goldmain. That's about it. That's the pieces that we create. Now, that being said, let's actually run a gRPC client. So to do that, I'm going to use grp crawl. It's going to be a deployment. It's all in the workshop. So again, a deployment, I'm creating something in Calico system namespace because certificates are there. I don't want to generate certificates right now. I'm just going to use Goldmain certificates that are already issued. So all this thing is doing is
This is why you need RBAC policy on your cluster, so people like Reza can't create.
That is very true. I do moonlight as a stand-up comedian and sometimes hacker, so be very careful with your permissions. People get in with like slightest leeway. Anyway, so I'm mounting those secrets in my pod and basically running that pod. So Next step would be going into the pod. I'm using kubectl just to exec into the pod. And here I have a command grpc grp curl. Now, I talked about grpc. Obviously, we are not using grpc reflection, so you cannot ask the server what it has. In order to figure out what are the services, you need to download the protobuf file. So basically, you go to Project Calico. In the Goldmain folder, there is a folder proto, and you can find the API proto. It's basically the protobuf file. From there, if you have Python, you can use proto-C to generate Python files. If Go, like, do something. Whatever language you're using, there is a tool somewhere in the internet for it. So next, what I want to do is, I want to actually feed that protobuf to my client and tell it where to connect and what to use. So list is not part of Goldmain. List is just part of the client. It would tell me what are the things in this API proto file. So as you can see, Goldmain has 3 services. Flow collector, which was the one that we said Felix uses. We don't need to use that unless somebody from Retina is here and wants to integrate that observability tool with Goldmain and Whisker. I'm up for it. Flows shows you the flows and statistics. Now, again, this doesn't tell me how to communicate with these services. So what I need to do is I need to describe them. Again, describe isn't something from Goldmain, it's from my client. So I do the describe, it says, all right, this protobuf has this service, and this service has 3 functions, 3 RPC functions that you can call. It gets this request, it tells you this result. Again, you can go in and describe every one of these, and it tells you, all right, for the request, you can have these parameters to like filter, and for the result, these are the parameters that you're getting back. But that would be me getting lost into the rabbit hole, so we're not going to do that. So now I know I have a service called Goldmain Flows, and there's a list function. If I try to talk to it, it says, well, you're cool, you cannot because it is certificate issues. Where is your certificate? And in order to fix that, we do what every security person does. We just use the certificates that are for the Goldmain. We don't create our own because that would be secure. Who wants that? So we take the same certificates and we're like, all right, we got this. What we do next is, for the client, again, we create the same sort of request. The only thing that we add is we feed it the certificate and the key. We also add the CA certificate because if you don't add it, this certificate is generated by Tigera operator. It's not part of valid CAs. So when the Linux kernel or your application is trying to figure out if this is a valid authority, it will come back to you and say, well, I see the certificate, but the server is using like insecure. So you either need to feed it insecure or use the CA cert. And when you do that, you can actually talk to Goldmain and ask questions, and it will provide you with all the parameters that Whisker backend sort of ingests to show you stuff. Now, this is a list, this is a snapshot, and if you remember, there was something called stream. You can hook to stream, and it will wait for any sort of thing that happens, and it just feeds it to you or your client right away. Now, I only talked about stream and list because these are the ones that I worked with, but the same goes for any of these protobuf offerings. So again, you can go list or describe any of these, for instance, statistics. All right, it takes something called list. I can do the same thing. Instead of flows, I can call statistics, and I can call list, and it will give me information about network policy chain for all the things that I have. And that is how you hook into Goldmain and create your own thing. Hopefully you don't do that and use Calico Enterprise or Calico Cloud, but if you want to do it, there is a way. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Any questions at all?
One way in the back.
There was a question to the chat earlier. Does Goldmain support OIDC?
Does Goldmain have OIDC integration? I don't think so. I feel like that's the type of thing that would be in our enterprise offering with, like we have, you know, integration with all your, like, single sign-on and that sort of stuff for accessing it through Calico Cloud. I believe the only way to access Whisker and this in the first version is to port forward to it and do it that way.
Which we recommend not to port forward, not to export it load balancer or node port service type. I asked one of our engineers, another distinguished engineer, and he said, do not write that anywhere in your tutorials. Don't encourage people to put the services in either node port or load balancer. So don't do that.
It's fine, there's MTLS, right?
There's no TLS on there's no MTLS on Whisker. That's the thing. So Whisker isn't authenticating anything. That's just if you have access to Whisker, it shows you that UI and with the streaming stuff. So the security for that needs to be outside it, at least in this first version.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anything's planned beyond that.
You could integrate it with your ingress gateway.
Yeah, Ingress Gateway is the suggestion from the back, and we now offer one of those.
Yeah.
But it's kind of locked down by default, so I don't think anything can access it by default. And then just for security reasons, you port forward into it if you want to access it. And then obviously if you have a secure way of exporting it, be our guest. But at the moment, we haven't provided that extra layer of config. It's such a big release already. There's, you know, we have to stop somewhere, and getting this out to people is exciting. So
Both
please try it out.
both Goldmain and Whisker create a cluster IP service. The only way that you can access to it is you either in the cluster or do the port forward. At the back, 5 minutes. No questions? Just 5 minutes? All right.
One over here.
This question before, why is stage network policy a separate CRD?
So I do know the answer to this one. Why is stage network policy a separate resource type to normal policy? The reason is stage policy allows you to stage a change to an existing policy as well as to stage an entirely new policy. So if we made it a flag, then there is no obvious way to keep your existing policy live and active and enforced, and then to also say, well, what would happen if you replaced this policy with this name with a new staged one? Stage network policy is it was also built out in conjunction with our UI, so that was the nicest way to represent that concept in the UI layer and to flip between. I agree, we could add a flag to an ordinary policy which just makes it be treated as a stage policy, but we don't usually like to have two ways to do something, and when we were designing it, the separate custom resource allowed us to implement that additional functionality of staging a change. So that was the reason. But there's no reason that we couldn't add the flag if we had motivation to do it.
I think RBAC is the other reason, because we can give the access to stage policy owners.
Yeah, another suggestion from the back. RBAC is another reason. So you can allow freer access to your stage network policies to see what would happen, and then promote them with a more privileged action. So yeah, there are reasons, but I don't see any reason apart from duplicating a bit of function that we couldn't have a flag to make a policy staged. Another question here?
Not related to the new release, but in our system we have a lot of TCP connections. We have MPP connections that keep open on our cluster. But we had an issue where we run into the amount of open connections we could have, run into the Linux contract problems. So we had one pod that does the SSL termination and another pod that actually handled the connection. But if they run on two different nodes, we had the ports being, every socket being used 3 times, one incoming, outgoing, and another type incoming. But we use AWS CNI networking. We were wondering if you would use Calico for networking, would that solve the problem? Would we then not have the contract table filling up 3 times?
So the question was, you have a lot of ingress connections, you're terminating SSL in one pod, and then you have a leg of the connection coming into one pod and then a leg going out to another pod, and then that pod is servicing, and you're finding that the contract table can get filled up with all that. I mean, in IP tables and NF tables mode, Calico is going to be using the Linux contract table. Obviously, you can make the contract table as big as you need it to be. So, you can make a 4 billion entry contract table now. I think it supports a lot.
You can on the kernel, but not on AWS. The EC2 services limit you.
That's possible. I'm not familiar with that limit. What else can you do with Calico that might help you? We have various. I'm not sure about AWS. We have various things where on-prem you could advertise out your service IPs or your pod IPs into your network, so you could spread that load across multiple nodes potentially. But in AWS, I'm not sure what you could do. I'm not super familiar with that particular limit. Have to do some digging. Maybe if you reach out on Slack and tell us what specific AWS limit you're looking at, we can dig into it a bit more. Yeah, don't know off the top of my head. Anybody else? Sorry, you managed to stump the maintainer. I think are we at time?
Yeah, there's 1 minute.
1 minute. One last question if anyone has anything, otherwise we'll wrap up.
Well, thank you all for joining us. It's great to have you here.